Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about taming your test suite. We're diving into two really powerful TestNG features, dependencies and groups, that can take a chaotic mess of tests and turn it into a smart, efficient automation framework.
So let me ask you something. Are your test failures really telling you the whole story? I mean, we've all been there, right? You run your test suite and the report comes back just a sea of red. But does that high failure count actually mean your app is totally broken, or is there something else at play?
A lot of the time, what you're actually looking at is what I call the domino effect. One single critical failure right at the beginning, maybe the app just fails to launch, and then boom, it triggers this massive cascade, knocking over every single test that comes after it. This is a huge waste of time, and worse, it completely clutters up your reports, making it almost impossible to see the real root cause.
Okay, so let's talk about this domino effect problem. To really get a handle on it, we first have to understand why it's happening. Let's look at a pretty common test flow to see what I mean.
So, picture a standard test flow, right? 5 simple steps. Open the app, log in, search for something, add it to your cart, and then log out. Now, each of these could be its own test method. But here's the thing. They have to run in this specific order to make any sense. I mean, you can't log in if the app never opened, and you definitely can't add an item to the cart if you haven't even searched for it yet. They're all linked. They depend on each other.
And this slide really shows you the problem and the solution side by side. The default behavior is, well, not great. If that first open app test fails, TestNG just plows ahead and tries to run everything else. And of course, they all fail. But look at the ideal behavior. It's so much smarter. It sees that open app failed, recognizes the dependency, and just skips the rest. Now that gives you a clean, useful report that points you right to the real problem.
Okay, so how do we get from that messy default to the clean, ideal scenario? Well, this is where TestNG really shines. It gives us a super simple, really elegant way to control that cascade.
The secret sauce is an attribute called depends on methods. You literally just add it to your @test annotation, and you're explicitly telling TestNG what the prerequisite is. It's like saying, hey, TestNG, hold on, don't even think about running this method unless that other one has already passed successfully. And look how easy this is. Seriously, with just this one little parameter, depends on methods equals open app, our login method is now intelligently connected. If open app fails, for whatever reason, TestNG is smart enough not to even bother with login. It just marks it as skipped. So clean!
And it gets better. You can create even more complex dependencies. You can make one test depend on multiple other tests. So here, our add to cart method will only run if both login and search were successful. If either of those fails, add to cart gets skipped. No more useless failures cluttering up the report.
All right, so we fixed the domino effect. Awesome, but you know how it is. As your project gets bigger, a whole new problem pops up. Test sprawl. Suddenly, your suite has hundreds, maybe even thousands of tests. And running the entire thing every single time, yeah, that's just not practical anymore.
Think about it. How many times have you just wanted to run the sanity tests, or only the regression tests? For a quick check after a tiny code change, you just want to run a handful of critical tests. But before a big release, you need to run the whole regression suite. You need a way to slice and dice your test suite on demand.
And this is where another TestNG feature, groups, comes to the rescue. This is your tool for precision. It lets you categorize all your test methods into these nice logical buckets, giving you total control over what you run and when.
And it's a super simple 2-step process. Seriously, that's it. Step 1, you tag your test methods with group names, right there in your Java code. Step 2, you go into your testng.xml file and filter, telling it exactly which groups to include or exclude for a particular run.
So, step 1, tagging. It is as easy as it sounds. You just add the groups attribute to your @test annotation. In this example, we're saying our login by email test belongs to the sanity group. It's one of those core, fundamental tests that absolutely has to pass.
And here's the cool part. A test doesn't have to belong to just one group. A test can be in multiple groups at once. Take this payment in dollars test. It's a critical sanity check, for sure, but it's also a key part of our bigger regression suite. That kind of flexibility is just incredibly powerful.
And when you do this across your whole suite, you start to build this really clear map of what every test is for. You can just look at it and see, okay, the login tests are for sanity, the sign-up stuff is for regression, and these super important payment tests, well, they're part of both.
Okay, on to step 2, Filtering. This is where the magic happens, and you do it in your testng.xml file. You just add a groups tag, and inside that, you tell it what to run. So for example, you can add an include tag for sanity. And just like that, you've told TestNG, for this run, I only want you to execute tests from the sanity group.
But you can get way more specific than that. You can start combining these rules. Check this out. You could tell TestNG to run everything in the regression group, but then add an exclude rule to skip any of those tests that are also tagged as sanity. This gives you this amazing fine-grained control to say, run only the deep regression tests and skip the quick sanity ones.
So let's step back. What happens when you put these two things together, dependencies and groups? Well, you take what might have been a rigid, brittle test suite and you transform it into something that's truly intelligent, flexible, and way more efficient.
Let's recap the benefits here. Using dependencies, that stops the domino effect, which means cleaner reports that get you to the root cause faster. And using groups, that lets you run exactly what you need when you need it, whether that's a quick 5-minute smoke test or a massive 5-hour regression run. Putting them together makes your whole automation process faster, smarter, and just so much easier to maintain.
So here's my question for you. How could you use groups to streamline your next test run? Think about your own projects for a second. What kind of logical categories do you already have? Could you group things by critical path, or new features, or maybe even just API tests versus UI tests? Getting a handle on these concepts is a massive step towards mastering your automation. It gives you that precision and control right when you need it most.